Today's story is titled, She Married a Man She Didn't Know and Everyone Else Did. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us get back to our main character. The night rain fell hard over the city, painting streaks of silver across the windows of a quiet flower shop that was about to close forever. Ava stood among the wilting roses and half-packed boxes, her hands trembling as she counted the last few bills in her register. The shop had been her mother's dream, and now it was about to vanish into debt and foreclosure. Her phone buzzed with another message from the bank, final notice. She closed her eyes, whispering, just one more week. But there was no more week. Outside, a sleek black car stopped by the curb, its headlights cutting through the drizzle. A tall man stepped out, dressed in a dark tailored suit that somehow stayed dry despite the storm. He entered the shop without asking permission, his presence filling the small room like thunder. Ava Collins? His voice was calm, almost too calm. You do not know me, but I have an offer that can solve every problem you have. She blinked, confused, clutching her apron. Who are you? He placed a white envelope on the counter, his eyes steady on hers. Liam Reed, he said simply. CEO of Reed and Company. The name hit her like lightning. Reed and Company, the luxury jewelry empire whose logo shone in every magazine window in town. I am sorry, she stammered, but I do not understand. Why would someone like you, he cut in, his tone precise, businesslike. I need a wife. For a limited term. You will be compensated generously, and in return, you will help me meet a condition in my late father's estate. Ava laughed softly, thinking it was a cruel joke. A wife? You cannot be serious. Liam did not smile. He slid the envelope toward her. Inside, she saw a legal contract stamped and notarized, her name already filled in. This is not a proposal, he said. It is an arrangement. No romance, no obligations beyond the terms. You will live at my estate, attend 5 public events by my side, and after 90 days, you will be free, debt cleared, shop saved, and $100,000 in your account. The hum of the rain filled the silence between them. Ava's heart pounded so loud she could barely hear her own thoughts. Why me? She whispered. Liam's eyes softened, just for a moment. Because you have nothing to gain by lying. You are honest. I need someone who will not use my name for fame or money. I need someone invisible. The word stung, but his calm conviction made her curious. And if I say no? She asked. He took a slow step back, his gaze steady. Then I find someone else tomorrow. But you will still lose everything. The clock above the counter ticked once, then twice. Ava looked around the empty shop, her mother's framed photo, the smell of fading lilies, the broken neon sign outside that flickered the word love in red light. She picked up the pen beside the contract. 3 months, she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Liam nodded. 3 months. Her signature bled slightly under the rainwater dripping from her sleeve. When she looked up, he was watching her with an unreadable expression. Congratulations, Mrs. Reed, he said quietly, slipping the papers back into the envelope. Our wedding is at noon tomorrow. Ava's mouth opened in disbelief, but he was already gone, the bell above the door chiming softly behind him. The sound lingered in the air long after the car disappeared into the storm. She stared at the empty doorway, the paper trembling in her hands. She had just agreed to marry a stranger, a man she did not know. What she could not imagine was that everyone else already did. The next morning came too fast. The rain had stopped, but the clouds still hung low as if watching what Ava had done. She stood in front of the city courthouse, clutching a simple bouquet of white lilies, the only flowers she could afford from what was left in her shop. Beside her stood Liam Reed, expression unreadable in a charcoal suit. The ceremony lasted barely 10 minutes. No music, no guests, only the sound of the clerk's pen and the echo of their vows spoken without feeling. When it was done, Liam extended his hand politely. "Congratulations, Mrs. Reed," he said, the same line he had used the night before, only colder now. A black limousine waited outside. Ava rode in silence, her reflection flickering against the tinted glass as the city rolled past. She felt invisible, like a ghost sitting next to power. The car turned toward the northern hills where the Reed estate rose like a fortress of glass and stone. When the iron gates opened, she caught her breath. It was not a home, it was an empire. Marble steps stretched beneath massive doors, and a staff of uniformed attendants stood in perfect formation. One of them, an older woman with sharp eyes, greeted her stiffly. "Mrs. Reed. Welcome." Ava nodded awkwardly, unsure what to say. Liam's voice cut through the silence. "Clara will assist you with everything. My schedule is full for the next few days. You will have breakfast at 9, dinner at 7, and appear beside me Friday night for the charity gala. Do not be late." Then he was gone. No warmth, no glance back. Ava followed Clara through endless halls lined with portraits of Reed ancestors and chandeliers that shimmered like captured stars. The house was beautiful but cold, every surface polished to perfection yet empty of life. Her assigned room overlooked the lake, a view so still it made her uneasy. She unpacked the few clothes she had, most too simple for this place. By evening she wandered down the hallway, hearing faint piano notes coming from behind a half-open door. Liam sat alone in a study, the city lights reflecting off the grand piano's glossy surface. His posture was tense, his fingers hesitating over the keys. The music stopped when he noticed her. "You should rest," he said quietly without turning. "I did not mean to interrupt," she replied. "I just heard music." He closed the piano lid gently. "It is fine. You may look around, but some rooms are off limits." His tone was polite but distant, as if every word was filtered through layers of control. "Do you always follow rules so strictly?" she asked before she could stop herself. He looked up, meeting her gaze for the first time since the courthouse. "Rules keep people from getting hurt," he said. There was something in his eyes, a flicker of exhaustion, or maybe regret, but it vanished too quickly to read. Over the next few days, Ava learned the rhythm of the estate. Every morning she ate alone while Liam disappeared into meetings and conference calls. The staff treated her with formality but little warmth, like a stranger wearing the wrong crown. Yet even in that coldness, she noticed small traces of humanity. Clara once left a cup of tea outside her door with a quiet note that said, "It gets easier." The words stayed with her. Friday arrived faster than expected. The gala was held in the ballroom, a sea of chandeliers, gold linens, and hundreds of eyes. Designers, investors, reporters, all eager to see the mysterious woman who had become the wife of the most private man in New York. A stylist fussed over her hair, pinning a diamond clip that shimmered under the light. Ava's heart pounded as she entered beside Liam, his arm steady but his expression fixed in public calm. Cameras flashed. Someone whispered her name. A reporter asked, "Mrs. Reed, how does it feel to marry the most sought-after bachelor in the country?" Ava froze, glancing up at Liam, realization dawning like fire. He was not just a CEO, he was a national figure. She forced a smile, her voice trembling. "It feels unexpected." The crowd laughed softly, charmed by her honesty. Liam leaned closer, whispering through his perfect smile, "Just keep breathing." The night spun in a blur of champagne, speeches, and music. When the final toast ended, Ava escaped to the balcony for air. The city stretched below, glittering like another universe. She leaned on the railing, whispering, "What have I done?" Behind her, Liam's voice was low but clear. "You have saved us both more than you know." She turned, startled, but he was already walking back inside, leaving her with the sound of violins and a heart she could no longer control. The following week unfolded like a dream Ava could not wake from. Each morning began with the quiet rustle of maids arranging breakfast and the distant echo of Liam's footsteps disappearing down the marble hall. He was always gone before she sat at the table, always buried in the business world that existed far beyond her reach. Every news channel spoke his name, yet inside this mansion, silence ruled. She kept to her room, reading, sketching small flower designs in her notebook, trying to remember who she had been before this marriage that did not feel like one. One afternoon, Clara entered with a clipboard and a calm, knowing tone. "Mr. Reed asked that you attend a meeting at the main office tomorrow," she said. "A photo session for the annual charity campaign." Ava hesitated. "Do I have to?" "Yes, Mrs. Reed," Clara replied gently. "You are part of the company image now." The next day, a driver took her downtown to the gleaming glass tower that bore the name Reed Company in silver letters. The building rose like a monument to wealth, reflecting the clouds above. Inside, employees straightened at the sight of her, whispering politely as she walked by. Cameras clicked, stylists hovered, and Liam stood across the room surrounded by executives. He looked the same as always, composed, immaculate, untouchable. When their eyes met, he gave a brief nod, an acknowledgement but nothing more. During the shoot, the photographer asked them to stand closer, his hands fluttering nervously. "A little more warmth, please. You are newlyweds, remember?" Ava forced a smile. Liam's hand brushed hers only for the camera's sake, his expression unchanged. When the lights dimmed and the cameras stopped, she turned away, embarrassed by the emptiness behind their smiles. Later, in the car, she finally spoke. "You could at least pretend I am not invisible." He looked out the window. "Pretending is what you signed up for." The words hit harder than she expected. For the rest of the ride, neither spoke. That night, as the rain returned, Ava wandered again through the silent halls. Her footsteps led her back to the study, where the faint glow of the fireplace cast shadows on the walls. Liam was there, papers spread across his desk, a glass of whiskey untouched beside him. "Why do you even bother coming in here?" he asked without looking up. "Because it is the only place where someone is not pretending," she replied softly. He sighed, setting the pen down. "You think I enjoy this? You think I wanted a stranger in my house, someone who looks at me like a story she cannot finish reading?" Ava hesitated, then stepped closer. "Then why choose me? Out of everyone you could have chosen?" For a long moment, he said nothing. Then quietly, "Because you did not know who I was. Everyone else did." The confession hung heavy between them, soft but sharp. Ava felt the air shift, the wall between them cracking just slightly. "I see," she said. "You needed someone who could not hurt your reputation." "I needed someone who would not lie," he corrected. "I have had enough of lies." His voice broke just enough for her to hear the truth underneath. Before she could ask more, a knock interrupted them. Clara entered, face pale. "Mr. Reed, the press office just received leaked documents about the marriage contract." Liam's jaw tightened. "From where?" "Anonymous email. They are threatening to publish unless you make a statement." Ava's pulse quickened. "What does that mean?" He stood, his composure freezing back into place. "It means someone wants to ruin us." He turned to Clara. "Handle the lawyers. No one says a word until I decide what to do." When she left, Ava whispered, "This will not just hurt you, will it?" Liam met her eyes, and for the first time, she saw fear there. "No. It will hurt you more." The next morning, headlines screamed across every screen, "The fake bride of New York's Diamond King." Reporters camped outside the gates, cameras flashing at every car that moved. Ava stayed inside, trembling as her phone buzzed with messages she could not bear to read. The woman who had once sold flowers on a quiet street was now painted as a fraud. Liam disappeared into meetings again, fighting storms she could not see. By sunset, she stood by the lake outside, wind tugging at her hair, wondering if any of it had ever been real. Behind her, a voice said, "You should not be out here." She turned. Liam stood at the steps, rain glistening on his shoulders. His eyes were tired but softer now. "I told you this would be messy," he said. "But I did not expect to care this much." The confession was small, almost lost to the wind, but Ava heard every word. For the first time, she did not feel like a stranger in his world. She just did not know yet whether that made things safer or far more dangerous. For the next few days, the mansion felt like a cage made of silence. Every newspaper headline carried their names, every television anchor spoke about the fake marriage scandal. Ava stopped checking the news. She spent most of her time near the lake, where the water at least did not judge her. The staff avoided her now, afraid of being seen speaking to the woman the press called a liar. One evening, Clara entered her room with a folded letter. "Mr. Reed asked me to give you this," she said gently before leaving. Ava unfolded the letter with shaking hands. Liam's handwriting was firm, deliberate. "Do not believe what they say. I am handling it. Please stay inside until I fix this. Trust me." She wanted to believe him, but every part of her life had already been burned by lies. That night, she heard voices downstairs, Liam's and another man's, loud and tense. She crept halfway down the staircase and saw a man in an expensive suit, his tone dripping with anger. "You should have known this would surface, Liam," the man said. "The board is furious. You made us all look like fools." "This is my personal life, not theirs," Liam replied coldly. "It became public the moment you married a woman from nowhere," the man snapped. "The company's stock is already dropping. If you want to keep control, dissolve the marriage immediately." Ava's breath caught. She knew that voice from the newspapers. It was Richard Hale, the chief financial officer of Reed and Company, and Liam's oldest rival. Liam straightened, his tone dangerous. "You are not the one giving orders here." Richard smirked. "Then watch how fast the board replaces you." When he left, slamming the door, Liam stood still for a long moment before noticing Ava on the stairs. "You heard that," he said quietly. She nodded. "He is right, is he not? This is destroying you." Liam walked closer until they were only a few steps apart. "No. What is destroying me is that I cannot protect you from it." His honesty broke through her fear. Without thinking, she reached out and touched his arm. "Then stop protecting me and tell me the truth. Why did you need this marriage at all?" His jaw clenched, then loosened. "Because my father's will requires me to be married for 1 year before I can transfer his foundation to independent control. I wanted to finish that clause without giving the tabloids a real story. You were supposed to be invisible. And now I am the headline," she said softly. "Now you are the only thing that feels real." The words left him before he could stop them. Ava stared at him, stunned, her heart thundering. "Do not say things you do not mean," she whispered. "I mean it more than you know," he said. For the first time since they met, the mask was gone. He looked not like a CEO, but like a man caught between duty and desire. Days passed, and the storm outside slowly turned inward. Invitations to events were cancelled. Investors withdrew meetings. But in the quiet, something began to shift. Liam started joining her for breakfast. Sometimes he even smiled, small, almost shy. They would walk the garden paths together, speaking about flowers, books, and the years they had both lost chasing different kinds of survival. One afternoon, she found him in the greenhouse repairing a broken planter. "You do not strike me as someone who fixes things with his hands," she teased. "You would be surprised how much I have had to rebuild," he said. Their laughter echoed softly against the glass. That fragile peace lasted until the next Galath one. Richard insisted they attend to prove stability. Ava wore a silver gown that shimmered like moonlight. She had almost begun to believe that maybe, somehow, the world could forget the headlines. But halfway through the night, Richard stepped on stage, his voice booming through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "tonight, we celebrate transparency, the thing our company values most. The lights dimmed, and suddenly images flashed on the giant screen behind him. Scanned pages of the marriage contract, Liam's signature, Ava's payment clause. Gasps rippled across the room. Ava froze as every camera turned toward her. Liam's face went pale, fury and disbelief colliding in his eyes. "Richard," he hissed, storming toward the stage, "you have gone too far." Security rushed forward, chaos filling the hall. Ava stood motionless, the shame swallowing her whole. The whispers grew louder, crueler. Gold digger. Fraud. Paid bride. Unable to breathe, she fled through the side doors into the night air. The marble steps were wet from the drizzle, and she stumbled as she reached the curb. A black car pulled up. It was Clara. "Mrs. Reed, please," Clara said. "Get in." Ava shook her head, tears streaking her cheeks. "Tell him I am sorry. Tell him I cannot be part of his damage anymore." She walked away into the rain, her gown dragging through puddles, the sound of applause fading behind her as the lights of the city swallowed her whole. Ava disappeared from the mansion that night, leaving nothing but a soaked gown and a ring placed carefully on the kitchen counter. The city swallowed her whole. She rented a small room above a bakery in the lower district, trading chandeliers for flickering light bulbs and designer gowns for second-hand sweaters. For the first time in months, she could breathe, but every breath carried the taste of regret. News about the Reed scandal filled the networks for days. Liam's board demanded his resignation. Stock prices dipped. Investors fled. And yet, through every headline, Ava stayed silent. She found work arranging flowers again at a corner shop where no one knew her name. She kept her head down, her heart heavy, her hands stained with color and soil. Every evening, she would glance at the television in the bakery below, half hoping and half fearing to see his face. One night, she did. Liam Reed stood behind a podium, flashes from cameras painting his face in white light. His voice was steady but tired. "I owe an explanation," he said. "The marriage you have read about began as a contract. But what grew from it was real. The woman you have judged showed more honesty than anyone in this room. She deserves respect, not ridicule." The crowd buzzed, reporters shouting questions. Liam continued, "As of tonight, I am stepping down from Reed and Company. Not because I am ashamed, but because I choose to rebuild what matters more than reputation." Ava stood frozen in front of the screen, the sound of applause echoing faintly from the broadcast. For the first time, she saw him not as a CEO or a millionaire, but as a man standing alone for truth. The next morning, she found a letter slipped under her shop door. It was handwritten on the same thick paper as their contract. "If you still believe in second chances, come to the old gallery on 7th Street tonight at 8. No signature, but she did not need one. That evening, the sky burned orange as she walked through the drizzle toward the address. The gallery windows glowed softly, and when she stepped inside, her breath caught. The entire room was filled with flowers, thousands of them. Roses, lilies, hydrangeas, each arranged with precision and care. At the center stood a single display, a glass case containing the original marriage contract, folded neatly beside her ring. Above it, a plaque read, "Love without terms." Liam stood nearby, hands in his pockets, watching her reaction. "You did all this?" she whispered. "Every flower," he said quietly. "It was your dream, not mine. I thought it was time you saw it come true." Ava's eyes welled up. "Why? After everything, after the headlines, after what I did?" He stepped closer. "Because you did what I could not. You walked away from power when it was easier to stay. That is integrity. That is love." She shook her head. "Love? We barely even knew each other." He smiled faintly. "Then let us start knowing each other now." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small envelope. Inside was a new document, just one page, one line. "This agreement shall have no end." Ava laughed through her tears. "Another contract?" "Only if you sign it," he said softly. "No clauses. No conditions. Just us. Her fingers trembled as she took the pen he offered. I do not need to sign, she whispered. You already have my answer. Liam exhaled, relief breaking across his face like sunlight after storm clouds. He reached for her hand, and this time there was no pretense, no cameras, no audience. Just two people who had lost everything but found each other. The lights dimmed as soft music played in the background, the sound of rain tapping gently against the glass. Ava looked around the sea of flowers and smiled. You remembered every detail, she said. You once told me flowers are proof that beauty can grow from dirt, he replied. So I built you a garden out of my mistakes. She laughed softly, her tears finally turning into warmth. When he kissed her, it was not a grand gesture, it was quiet, steady, real. Outside, the rain stopped. A week later, the newspaper printed one last headline about them. Former CEO opens gallery for local artists, proceeds donated to community gardens. Beneath it was a photo of Ava and Liam standing side by side, their smiles calm and unguarded. The caption read, "The best contracts are written by the heart." And this time, for both of them, it was true. A month passed since the night at the gallery, and the world had slowly moved on from the scandal. Ava and Liam rebuilt their lives piece by piece, far away from the flash of cameras and the noise of gossip. They moved into a smaller house near the edge of the city, one with creaking floors, ivy-covered walls, and a view of the skyline that looked soft and distant. It was nothing like the mansion, but it felt real, like something earned instead of inherited. Ava reopened her flower shop with the help of a small grant Liam provided from what remained of his personal funds. He refused to call it charity. It is an investment in honesty, he said with a small smile. The shop became a quiet success, not because of wealth or name, but because people felt something genuine in the way Ava arranged every petal and leaf. Liam, meanwhile, worked with local charities, rebuilding the foundation his father had started, but with no profit motives, no loopholes, just help where it was needed. Sometimes, people recognized him on the street, whispering about how the former CEO had traded his empire for a cause. He never corrected them. One afternoon, Ava found him sitting outside the shop, his sleeves rolled up, hands dirty from helping her unload crates of flowers. You know, she said, for someone who used to run a multi-million-dollar company, you are surprisingly good at carrying boxes. He looked up, wiping sweat from his forehead. Do not underestimate what a man will do when he is trying to earn his wife's respect. She laughed softly, the sound light and full. Their lives were not perfect, but they were peaceful. Every evening, they shared coffee on the back porch, watching the city lights flicker as the sun went down. On weekends, they volunteered at the community garden that had been built from the gallery's proceeds. Children and families came to plant flowers, herbs, and vegetables. Liam often spent hours teaching kids how to care for seedlings, explaining that growth took time, patience, and sunlight much like love. Ava would watch him, her heart swelling at how far he had come. Yet even in this peace, there were moments of doubt. One night, as rain whispered against the windows, Ava turned to him and asked, "Do you ever miss it? The company, the power, the control?" Liam thought for a moment before answering. Sometimes I miss the clarity of it. But not the emptiness. Back then, I built walls made of money and called them safety. You showed me they were just prisons. She reached over, resting her hand on his. You built new walls now. They are made of flowers. He smiled at that, his fingers brushing hers. Then I hope they never stop blooming. As the weeks went on, whispers of a comeback began to circle. The board of Reed and Company, desperate to regain the trust of the public, reached out to Liam with an offer to return not as CEO, but as head of the foundation he had always wanted to protect. When he told Ava, she hesitated. If you go back, everything might start again, the pressure, the spotlight. I will only go back if you come with me, he said simply. She looked at him for a long time, then nodded. Then we go together. The following month, they walked into the Reed building hand in hand. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted, but this time there was no fear in her eyes. She stood beside him proudly, not as the woman hired to play a role, but as his partner, his equal. Liam spoke to the crowd with calm confidence. Reed and Company is changing. We are dedicating half our profits to community development and environmental renewal. This is not about imagery, it is about redemption. When the applause came, it felt different, sincere. Ava looked up at him, her eyes shining. You did it, she whispered. No, he said softly. We did. That evening, after the conference, they returned home to their small house, exhausted but content. Ava placed a single white lily in a vase on the kitchen table, the same kind she had carried on the day of their courthouse wedding. Liam watched her quietly before saying, "It is strange, is it not? Everything began with a contract, and now it feels like it was fate." She turned, smiling. Maybe it was both. Maybe fate needed a little paperwork to find us. He laughed, pulling her close. Outside, the city lights shimmered, reflecting on the window like stars. The world had once called their marriage fake, but now every moment they lived was proof that the truest promises are not written on paper, they are written in how you choose to stay. And this time, neither of them was going anywhere. The following spring arrived quietly, carrying with it the scent of rain and blooming magnolias. Life for Ava and Liam had settled into something soft and steady. Their flower shop had become a place where people came not just to buy flowers but to share stories. Liam spent his mornings helping her before heading to meetings at the foundation, where his leadership had started to rebuild the company's reputation from the ground up. They no longer chased wealth or fame. Instead, they chased meaning. One afternoon, as sunlight filtered through the shop windows, a familiar face appeared at the door. Clara. She looked older, gentler somehow, carrying a small box wrapped in brown paper. "I thought you might want this," she said, handing it to Ava. Inside was a gold pen engraved with the words Reed and Company Legacy Edition. Ava's eyes softened. "He never told me this existed." Clara smiled faintly. "It was supposed to be given to you on your first anniversary. Mr. Reed designed it himself." When Clara left, Ava turned the pen over in her hands. "He thought of everything," she murmured. Liam entered moments later, dust on his sleeves from unloading supplies. "What is that?" "A reminder," she said softly. "Of how far we have come." That evening, they took a walk through the community garden they had helped build. The air smelled of fresh soil and lilacs. Families were still there, laughing as they planted seeds, the way life had always meant to be. Liam paused by a wooden bench engraved with the words "Love Without Terms." "Do you ever think about what would have happened if we had never signed that contract?" he asked. Ava smiled, brushing a leaf from his jacket. "We would have missed everything that mattered. Sometimes mistakes are just fate wearing a disguise." He laughed quietly, pulling her close as the wind carried petals across the path like falling snow. The peace between them was complete until a letter arrived 2 weeks later. It came in a crisp white envelope, sealed with the emblem of Reed and Company's board. Liam opened it at the kitchen table, his brow furrowing. "They want me back as CEO," he said. Ava froze. "But you rebuilt the foundation to be free from all that pressure." "They are offering full control this time," he replied. "They want someone the public trusts." "And what do you want?" she asked carefully. He looked at her, eyes conflicted. "I want what we built to last. But if I return, it might change everything again." Ava reached for his hand. "Then decide for us, not for them." For days, he wrestled with the choice. He walked the garden paths at night, replaying every moment that had led them here, the contract, the scandal, the forgiveness. Finally, one morning, he placed the letter in the fireplace and set it aflame. "We already have everything worth leading," he said simply. Ava wrapped her arms around him as the last curl of smoke vanished. That afternoon, they hung the gold pen in a small frame above the shop counter. Below it, they added a handwritten sign for the promises we kept, not the ones we signed. Customers often asked about it, and Ava would smile and say, "It is a long story about a contract that turned into a love letter." And in every way that mattered, it was exactly that. Summer came with its golden light and warm wind, and with it came the one-year mark of their marriage. It had been a year since the day Ava signed a paper that was supposed to bind her heart for a season but instead changed her life forever. The flower shop had flourished beyond what either of them had imagined. Local artists began to display their work there, and each weekend the place filled with laughter, coffee, and the faint scent of roses. On the morning of their anniversary, Ava woke to find the shop already open. The counters were covered with fresh blooms, every color imaginable. Liam stood behind them, holding a small white envelope with her name written in gold ink. "Good morning, Mrs. Reed," he said softly. "You should not have," she said, smiling. "I thought we agreed no gifts, only promises." "This is both," he replied, handing her the envelope. Inside was a ticket. Not a plain ticket, but an invitation to the reopening of the Reed and Company Foundation under a new name, the Collins Garden Initiative. Ava looked up, stunned. "You named it after me?" "After the woman who reminded me that worth does not come from wealth," he said. "Every project from this foundation will focus on community growth, schools, gardens, and small businesses led by people who just need a chance, like you once did." Her eyes glistened with tears. "You did not have to do that." He smiled. "Yes, I did. You saved me from a life built on contracts. I thought it was time to sign one that truly meant something." That evening, they attended the opening gala together. It was held in the same ballroom where their world had once fallen apart. But this time, the lights felt softer, and the room was filled with familiar faces from the communities they had helped. No tabloids, no whispers, just genuine applause. Clara was there too, standing near the stage, smiling with pride. Liam took the microphone as the crowd quieted. "1 year ago," he began, "I made a mistake that led me to the truth. I believed love needed rules, but I was wrong. Love is not about control, it is about choice. And today, we choose to keep building something real." The audience erupted in applause. Ava stood at the edge of the stage, her heart full. When the noise died down, Liam turned toward her and continued, "Ava, the first time I asked you to marry me, I gave you a contract. Tonight, I am asking again, but not for business this time, for forever." Gasps filled the room as he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was not a diamond but a simple gold band engraved with the words "No terms, just love." Ava covered her mouth, tears spilling freely. "You are serious," she whispered. "More than ever," he said. The room held its breath as she nodded, laughing through her tears. "Then my answer is still yes, again and always." The crowd cheered as Liam slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her under the golden light. The same room that had once witnessed their shame now witnessed their redemption. Later, as they stood together on the balcony, Ava leaned into him and said, "Do you realize? We just ended where everything began." Liam smiled, wrapping his arm around her. "No," he said softly. "We just began again." And somewhere below them, the city lights flickered like 1,000 tiny promises kept. A year after the foundation's reopening, the world had changed quietly around them. The Collins Garden Initiative had grown into something larger than either of them expected. Across the city, abandoned lots had become community gardens, schools had green rooftops, and murals painted by local artists stretched across old brick walls. Each project carried a plaque that read "Love without terms." Ava often visited those places, her hands still carrying the scent of flowers, her heart full every time she saw children planting seeds where concrete once ruled. Liam had returned to the boardroom only to guide the foundation, but he refused every offer to reclaim his old title. He preferred the dirt under his nails from planting rather than the ink from signing deals. Their small home remained their sanctuary, filled with laughter, late-night tea, and the quiet comfort of belonging. On a calm Sunday morning, Ava woke early to find Liam sitting by the porch, reading the newspaper. The sunlight touched his face, highlighting the lines that came not from stress but from smiling too often. "You are up early," she said, wrapping a blanket around his shoulders. Could not sleep, he replied. The board wants to expand the initiative to other cities. She smiled. Then it means we are doing something right. He folded the paper, looking at her softly. Do you ever think about how strange it all was? That a contract brought us here? Every day, she admitted. But maybe it was never about the contract. Maybe it was about two broken people learning how to write something new together. He reached for her hand. Then let us keep writing. Months later, they returned to the courthouse where it had all begun not as a duty, but as a choice. The clerk who had once married them stood behind the same desk, blinking in surprise. Back again? He asked. Liam smiled. We thought we would make it official this time. No contracts, no conditions, just vows. The ceremony was simple, attended only by a few friends, Clara, and a handful of workers from the gardens. Ava wore a light blue dress, the color of morning sky, and held a bouquet of lilies she had arranged herself. When Liam spoke his vows, his voice trembled but never faltered. You taught me that love is not about perfection or promise, it is about showing up when it matters most. I vow to keep showing up, every day. Ava's voice was soft but steady. You once gave me a contract with rules. Now I give you a promise with no end. When they kissed, the small room filled with applause. Clara wiped a tear discreetly. Outside, the bells rang across the square as if the city itself was celebrating their redemption. Later that evening, they returned to the flower shop for a quiet dinner. The gold pen still hung above the counter, framed with their handwritten note for the promises we kept, not the ones we signed. Ava lit a candle and poured them each a cup of coffee. Do you realize, she said, we started with nothing but a deal, and somehow we built a life? Liam nodded, taking her hand. Because love is the only agreement that never expires. They sat there in the soft glow of candlelight, surrounded by flowers, laughter drifting from the street outside. And as night settled over the city, one truth remained: their story had begun with paper and ink, but it endured because of faith and forgiveness. Their hearts had become the only contract they would ever need. And this time, it was signed forever.